work of Alcazar and Rivera.
Now these were two Jesuits that are starting already way back early, and before the 1600 already. Rivera and Alcazar were already commissioned to penetrate, since the infiltration was very difficult in the days through the Reformation. They can spot an infiltrator very easily in those days because the struggle was face to face with the Vatican. Then Roman Catholics and the Inquisitors, they have a hard time trying to infiltrate the Christian churches, even in Spain, where it was underground completely. They have a difficult time, and there was a very fearful thing to infiltrate. Then nevertheless, they did it. They did infiltrate, and this is how they find many Christians worshiping the Lord in underground places. Now, through infiltration. But in these cases, they were not commissioned under the stream of an induction, as I was under the stream of an induction. Rivera and Alcázar, they were to work, and then later Lacunza. There is more, but I will mention these three, the most important ones, in dealing with one special area, prophecy. They were assigned to deal especially with prophecy, with the purpose to do two things at least: to cover up any prophecy relate to the origin of the Antichrist, relate to the Antichrist, and relate to the papacy, relate to the Antichrist. And second, to cover up any idea that the Roman Catholic institution was never a Christian church, as I pointed out before. What that means is to make possible in Bible commentaries and church history that the Roman Catholic institution always will appear as a Christian church falling in apostasy, and then we need a renewal, That was the idea that Rivera, Alcázar, and Lacunza tried to trace. Among other things, they tried to implement the idea that most of the prophecies of the book of Revelations were already fulfilled by the time of Nero. What that means is that don't worry about prophecies today, don't worry about the Antichrist, don't worry about a one-world government, don't worry about nothing like that. Yes, that's correct. Walter Martin has been, and confessed by him, as a matter of fact, I could mention that I have a debate already with Mr. Martin, I have already a debate with Mr. Gary Metz, and I took them both by surprise. I took Mr. Gary Metz on radio by surprise. I not only persuade him, I force him to answer these accusations and these slanders. And then I took immediately Mr. Walter Martin in Anaheim. And both gentlemen, they were not looking really to meet with me. They were trying to avoid, if it were all possible, that confrontation that I did have with both. We have tapes of these confrontations and these debates. And then Mr. Walter Martin, he himself, even so that I knew his name in the list of very confident persons by the Jesuit order. What that means is that the Jesuit order will have a list made up in United States of people as well as institutions that are worth trusting. And Mr. Walter Martin, I even mentioned to him in this confrontation with him that his name was listed in that list.
What did he say?
And he said to me, well, I don't know why my name is there. I said, you should know.
You should know.
Yes. I said, you should know. As a matter of fact, why Mr. Walter Martin, 25 years ago, he even wrote about the cult to Mary, a book about Mary, and 25 years after, he have a list, as a matter of fact, that I have with me, a list of cults where he lists the most dangerous cults, and all who in the list of his most dangerous cults are Christian Science, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, starting with the Mormons. And suddenly I was expecting that he will place at the top of the most dangerous cult Roman Catholicism, but were the Mormons. Now, the Mormons become the victim of Roman Catholicism not only, but become the victim of Mr. Walter Martin, because even the Mormons are the product of Roman Catholicism.
The pressure for Sunday in the future is an issue is that a product of the Jesuits, or what do you know about that?
Well, what I know is this, that even the Seventh-day Adventist denomination has been placed under the greatest setup and a real setup of all the history of the denomination. And the proof and evidence is that now the leadership is already in a position where they themselves cannot play the role of Frankenstein no longer, because they're being unveiled, they're being discovered, and their intents and their true intents, and cases where already most of them has been already trained, prepared by Jesuits to be where they are.
So, will this Sunday issue seems to be on the president's desk to be signed? The moral majority is pushing for it. The Lord's Day Alliance has pushed for it from its inception. That was one of the reasons it was created.
Yes.
So in other words, you think that for example, the Adventist leadership are going to fold up?
No, that is not true.
No.
In the how the denomination has been set up and their keeping of the Sabbath is this. The Roman Catholic institution already, and this is why you have Biacochi and some other elements within the denomination, there already has been even honor, and condecorated by the Vatican concerning their work. And actually, the Roman Catholic institution is preparing the greatest surprise of them all, because it's not going to be even Sunday that they are going to be after. It's going to be Saturday, and you will see why. The reason of this is when already Catholicism already came about with the idea during the Vatican Council II that a Roman Catholic Mass that was only to be performed on Sundays as to be the only valid Mass for Roman Catholic. Even if they go any other day, Saturday, Friday, there was no valid Mass for their obligations. Now, during the Vatican Council, the second session, suddenly the whole picture changed, and you know what for. The whole picture changed and said, now Saturday Mass is considered to be valid Mass as Sunday Mass. But that means not only that, more than that, Saturday Mass can replace Sunday Mass.
But it's the Protestants,
yes,
not the Jesuits that appear to be pushing for the Sunday, for national Sunday law.
Yes, actually, this is to trigger a reaction to really make use for a cover-up. The issue here is not even Saturday, is not even Sunday. The issue here, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, the issue here is the person of the Antichrist. You see, in matters of days, right now, the conflict is being utilized, the struggle between Saturday and Sunday is being utilized more for the benefit of Roman Catholicism than even for the benefit of the Christian Church. And that is how it has been exploited, to the point that already the Vatican approved, listen to this, approved the publication officially of Biacochi, see, and dealing with from his book called From Saturday to Sunday. Now, if the Vatican go as far as approving a publication as such, what do you think that is happening? Do you see the point here?
Yeah.
If the Vatican goes as far, telling an official, a member of the denominational body of the Seventh-day Adventist, I am the author of this book, I'm telling you that you have changed Saturday to Sunday, that you, as a Roman Catholic, you were the one that changed it. I mean, openly saying that there you did this. And the Cardinal Seren comes and say, oh yes, we agree, we did this, we agree. Now, what are they trying to gain by doing this, by accepting this? What they are trying to gain? They are trying to gain the sympathy, they are trying to gain the life, and they are trying to gain the entire denomination as they have gained the Pentecostal, as they have gained the Protestants through different other issues. Nevertheless, they touch every other issue except the real issue. Through any other issues, like the tongues business, the charismatic gift, you see, they are dealing with their things where nobody can see what is behind. In other words, they cannot openly see any evil, because you will see the Vatican as a good, in a good position, a renewal position, say, yes, we recognize that we did wrong, we changed from Saturday to Sunday, and we admit this, and we're going to do something about it. The Vatican Council did it. You see, we are going to incorporate now officially the Mass on the day of Sabbath. You see?
Because the Bible's clear.
Oh, yes. When they go that far, you can see one thing for sure. Now, there is, in this issue, in my own personal belief of the Scripture, you do not see that the issue in prophecy is one day or the other. The issue in prophecy is more than a day. Is more than a day. The issue in prophecy is who and where is the Antichrist now. Once that the person perceives the reality in the manifestation of this prophecy, they'll know the rest according to the Scripture. But when a person is blind to the reality of who the Pope is, and the Pope is granting every favor to every other denomination, they'll believe that the Pope, if you want to do some homework throughout the news media, you will find something. As a matter of fact, not only throughout the news media, but you will find something very interesting even throughout film industry. That a lot of movies has come, and a lot of article has been written up, and a lot of television show has come out, and even movies and TV and through radio, a lot of talk show has come out dealing with the very issues that I have dealt in these 4 parts of my testimony. They did not this before. Before 1979, over all these issues, everybody was quiet. Every other reporter will never inquire about celibacy and the problems of celibacy, about lesbian, about gays within the clergy, about the mafia and the relationship of the bishops and the cardinals with the mafia and the clergy, about the banks, international bank situation with the Vatican bank. Nothing of this was ever dealt with, except when these testimonies went out. Then the news media started dealing, the film industry started dealing with priests that were unfaithful priests, cardinals that were unfaithful cardinals, bishops that were unfaithful bishops. As a matter of fact, even Jesuits within the Jesuit order were sent out immediately to answer to these very issues, to answer in their way. What that means is they went saying from every direction, yes, we recognize there are priests involved with the mafia, there are even bishops, we recognize there are priests that they have broken their celibacy and they have committed a fornication and they're still committing fornication. We recognize it, but you see, the church is another matter. The idea always was to tell the Catholic people, tell the Christian world, yes, these things happen, but this is isolated. This is one priest, a bishop, a cardinal, someone that was unfaithful. But this is not the religion. This is not the system. This is not our belief. This is not our life. This is not our conduct. That is what they pretend to do. You have, among even present Jesuits, Hans Kahn, the German Jesuits, and then you have Malachi Martin. These men under dispensation. What that means, granting them the authority and the power by the Vatican and the Jesuit general to go out and speak against the Pope, speak against the liturgy, speak against the clergy, and they will not suffer excommunion. You see that they can go now trying to deal with these very issues, trying to justify that regardless of all this commotion, of all this immorality, of all this corruption, of all these crimes, this is different from the mother, from the system. These are individuals within the clergy, but not the system. And of course, the system is the one that created them all.
Has there been a certain promotion to create in the United States a special way of looking at Roman Catholicism?
Oh, yes. Yes,
you mean type of propaganda special for this country?
Yes, definitely. This is why they has been so successful here in the United States, being a country of a Protestant inheritance with a Christian beginning, right in the 1620, when the Pilgrims arrived to the northeast coast of this country, and suddenly today is making a concordat between the Vatican and the United States. Now, what that means, this is the greatest treason ever known to the very founders of this country. I mean, the most direct treason and betrayal that have taken place in this country has taken place, and the fact that now this government is looking for fellowship, for relationship with the very criminals that caused the greatest massacre in Europe, by which massacre and through which persecution the Pilgrims arrived to the northeast coast of the United States.
We were told that the United States would repudiate every principle of the Constitution, and I'm sure that that is not too far in the distant future. You know, an integral part of the papal policy was an organization called the Inquisition during the Middle Ages. It began in the 12th century under Innocent III, which was the most powerful of all the popes of that time period. The purpose of the Inquisition was to seek out heresy and stop it, but it used some very unorthodox methods. One of those methods was to force certain confessions out of Christians or others, and with those confessions use them to form public opinion, to raise crusades, to destroy the primitive Christian church. Crusades went out that destroyed people by the millions. We'll not know how many until the Judgment Day. But the Inquisition, the Catholic Church said, well, yes, there was an Inquisition, yes, we destroyed people, but it was part of the barbarity of the times. Others did it too. But of course, she claims that she's changed today, and Protestants are believing her. But you know, the Inquisition still exists, and it's actively being carried out. Beneath many of her large churches today are instruments of torture. I want you to listen to the testimony of Dr. Rivera as he begins to share with us about the Inquisition today.
In your training and in your life as a Jesuit priest for many years, did you ever come to the point that you were required to destroy human life?
Definitely. It's part of the oath and induction of any Jesuit that come under the oath and induction, and perhaps you care to know that I have revealed a great deal of this in this booklet after Alberto came out, the first part of my testimony, dealing with my minor seminar and major seminar as we went through these questions. And now you have in double cross, it is a revealing, at least a little part in these pages here, page, let's see, this is 12 and 13 at least, you see that is part of the oath and induction that I was taking as I swear to take the life not only of kings and princes and governors and mayors and senators and congressmen, but even my mother or father or brother or sister, whosoever come to be between the interests of the Roman Catholic system and the interests that they pursued. What that means is, if a president of a nation is there to interfere with the interests of the Roman Catholic institution and their pursuit of power, they will be crushed. They'll actually, we were granted, I was granted that authority, that power, to exercise that authority, that power. That when any individual, whether he is a child, whether he is a woman, whether it's an elder man, whether it's a boy, whether it's a girl, whether it's a king or a queen, regardless of who the person is, when that person, that city, that nation, this country oppose to the goals of the Roman Catholic institution and interfere with, that already call for disaster.
What would you say has happened to the Inquisition You know, right now we don't see inquisitional tribunals, but we know that the goal of the church is still the same, and the engine of the Inquisition was set up all over the world. What's happened to that particular department of the church?
It's still in force in one way or another. He said to this fellow, if you weren't a Catholic, what would you be? He said, the big Monsignor Segura said to him, if I wasn't a Catholic, I'd be a Seventh-day Adventist. And he said, Charlie, if I could get out of being a Catholic, I'd be a Seventh-day Adventist tomorrow.
Is that right?
And he said, Charlie, he says, I advise you, if you can, to be a Seventh-day Adventist and join them. And then just a short while after that, it was the time when in the spring they have Good Friday and they don't eat certain things and meat on certain days, and they were having to go way out in the morning early and leave to their work, and so they had a special concession of the Chinese cafeteria that he was in, or restaurant, that he would come down at 4 o'clock in the morning and fix their lunch and give them what they wanted to eat. And Charlie Hibbard says to him, why don't you order yourself up a good beefsteak like I do? You know there's nothing to that. He says, well, he said, I mind to, I will. And while he was ordering up the beefsteak, he said, I don't know, I feel funny about this, but and he went ahead and they ate the beefsteak, and he had his half gone when 3 big dignitaries of the Catholic Church marched in to find him and tell him about some of the work he had to do. And when they left, Charlie Hibbard looked at him and he said to Charlie Hibbard, you don't know what this means to me. He says, I'll catch hell for this. And he says, I used to be the head official that did the punishment for the folks that weren't living up to what they're supposed to. And if you go back to the great big churches in New York, you'll find way down deep in the basement where the corners are cut off like corner cupboards would be. And I was the one that took the people that was sentenced and changed them in that corner, brought 1 brick and 1 trowel of mortar each day, and their meal, until there was 1 opening for 1 brick. And I put in the last brick and the last trowel of mortar. And behind there's many skeletons. It says, you don't know, Charlie, what this means to me. I was the chief executioner for that deal. And me to eat beefsteak like this, he said, I'll hear from this in a few days. He says that I'm from that tribunal back there, and said, you wait and see. In a few days, he got a notice that he was to appear before the tribunal in New York. And when they left on the train, he said, Charlie, if I live after this, said, if I live, I'll send you a card, greetings for your birthday. The card never came. I could tell you stories like this by the hours.
So the Inquisitional Tribunal is still active for Roman Catholic people?
It's still active, and it is for people that are not Roman Catholic if they get a chance to, without too much publicity that would damage them, their work and their cause.
Now in Mexico they opened up the cloistered convents and turned some of them into museums, so tourists can see the torture implements that were used on the nuns. And I imagine that in backward countries like Mexico and Spain and some of these areas, this type of thing keeps going without interruption.
It's still done in America to some extent, too, in the United States of America. Yes, and I've seen in some of the basements where they're building some of their churches where they're preparing to put some of those things in.
They actually have cells and things underneath.
They have cells underneath, way down, not only 1 story, but stories and stories below.
There is enough left of the old Inquisition. I will say there is a new Inquisition today, not even tomorrow, it's at work today. and here, even in the United States, and has been always. There is not replacement of a new Inquisition replacing the old. No. What happened is that the old Inquisition, as the years went by, under the sponsorship and guidelines of the Jesuit general and the Jesuit order, they has been changing their devices and their tools, in their I will say their devices, their methods. You see, what happened is the Inquisition is the same Inquisition. The Holy Office never closed the door since it was established in 1200. You see, it never closed the door. As a matter of fact, within the Vatican, this is an office that never closed the door day and night. Today have a different name. It happened that they have a different name today, as they have different devices and methods to bring people to trial. Today, the Inquisition is at work. As a matter of fact, you have a book here that is called Night Journey from Rome, that we came to publish. A Night Journey from Rome is one of the last converted Roman Catholic priests in the United States, an American priest that was converted to Christ and his gospel about 2 years ago and came with us to the reading of Alberto, the first part of my testimony. He was Clark Butterfield, is his name, a Californian priest. There is the book here, Night Journey from Rome. And here is the most revealing thing about the actual Inquisition in the United States. He was so much aware of the reality of that Inquisition that in his own will, he prevented even his relatives, his own mother, his own relative, from bringing his body to the Roman Catholic parish the day that he was ready to depart to be with his Lord and Savior. And he almost prophesied in that will, because exactly that was the intention. Immediately that he was killed by the Jesuits of Rome and Detroit, Michigan, through a Roman Catholic doctor, member of the Knights of Columbus. Then you can see the Inquisition is alive and well, with different devices, different methods, and a different name. Today they call the Office for the Preservation of the Doctrine and the Faith. We were trained in many different things, from chemistry for poisons to warfare of any kind. And of course, we were not to be involved in these things. Let me explain this. Jesuits under the stream of an induction, they were not directly to be involved. They only were the elements, the intellectual element that will prepare this. The case of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the president, was killed by the Jesuits of Rome, but there was no a Jesuit there involved directly. Nevertheless, was the Jesuit who prepared the plot against his life and prepare and train those who were to kill him.
They arranged it.
Yes, it happened with President Kennedy, the same thing. The assassination of Kennedy is another fact that can be proved.
Adventists should wake up. Time is short. What organizations have now been taken over by the Jesuit order and other institutes of Catholicism? What world powers are in her hands to be used in this final chess game for the takeover of the world? We can get some idea when we look back to the Council of Trent in the 1540s through the 1560s. At that time, during those years, we find vows that were taken by these secret orders to take over the education of the Protestants, take over their schools, take over their churches, especially to destroy the Protestant Bible by creating many translations, destroy the monarchies of Europe, destroy nationalism, to use astronomy and astrology to create new calendars that would eventually transfer the sanctity from Sabbath or Saturday to Sunday. Their goal was to take over the business world, internationalism. They were to take over banking, to take over Judaism and the movement of Zionism, to create political strife and chaos and all of these things for one end, that Catholicism should rule. Listen.
I did training in monasteries and convent where I prepare cursillistas, the Legion of Mary, the Blue Army, many of these militant organizations. I train and prepare how they can become Baptists, how they can become Adventists, how they can become Methodists, how they can become Presbyterian, how they can become Pentecostal, and all these areas where they must infiltrate any area.
You bring up one of the other questions I have. Might as well ask it now. Particularly the Blue Army. Is that in some way connected with the Fatima?
That's correct.
Is
yes.
that to protect it? Or
that they are the army that creates the greatest promotion of that cult,
yes.
that satanic cult here in United States. In every country, the Roman Catholicism display this promotion to the so-called Virgin. That is not even Mary, the Mary that we know in the Gospel, but a distortion of that really, truly Mary of the Gospel. They display to different militant organizations the promotional need for certain saint or virgin or whatever. And the Blue Army is the greatest promoters of the call to Mary here in the United States. The Opus Dei is another arm of the Jesuits. What that means, you have Masons, you have Illuminatis, okay. You have the New Age movement, you have the Trilateral Commission, you have the Club of Rome, you have so many others. There are in different areas working through certain programs what they need in that particular area where these organizations move, whether they are secret or public organizations, they need to control certain area of certain people, and this is where and how they'll be ready to have them under control through these organizations. The Opus Dei mainly, they move next to what they call Christian democracy. The so-called Christian democracy is an outgrowth of this Opus Dei. It's exactly the words in Latin precisely define that. The Latin definition is for Opus Dei is the work of God. What that means, the Opus Dei. Opus meaning the work, and then you have how you call Dei, Opus Dei, the work of God.
When the Council of Trent occurred, it was controlled by the Jesuits.
Yes.
How about the Vatican II?
Now,
connection?
Yes, the connection is very, very, very prophetical. I will say this, and I think that will clear the whole point here, because it's so prophetical that while the Council of Trent was the first council to be managed by the Jesuit order, the Vatican Council was brought about by the same Jesuit order with the same intention. And you know the intention of the Council of Trent. The intention behind the Council of Trent was the Counter-Reformation. What was the intent of the Vatican Council II? Another Counter-Reformation, but called today, how you call it? Renewal. You see the point? Now, the change wasn't named, but the intentions were the same.
Yes.
See, more sophisticated today.
Yes.
You see, the Counter-Reformation was taken to the Council of Trent. That was the entire Counter-Reformation was performed by the Council of Trent, decrees. Then through that time until today, Vatican Council II came about with the idea of renewal. That means another step forward, and the final, I will say this is the final stage of a Counter-Reformation.
Now, how about the charismatic movement? What's the connection with that? The
charismatic movement is serving the purpose, as we said, of one of the many issues. as we said about Saturdays and Sunday, they'll pick up every issue with different denominations. In the case of the charismatic movement, they pick up the charismatic movement because one factor: they could not bring under subjection the Pentecostal denominations.
They couldn't.
They could not. Even when they went to the ecumenical movement before, from 1945 down to our day, since this already started. As a matter of fact, if you want to know, the World Council of Churches started by financed by the Jesuits in Europe in 1945, after the end of the Second World War already, or by the time that the World War was to end, already the Jesuits were at work trying to unite all the Protestants in Europe. And that was the origin of the World Council of Churches and the ecumenical movement. Today the charismatic movement is serving that purpose. Where the Pentecostal could not be bring into the ecumenical forum, they brought it through the exercise of charismatic gift.
We were on the way back from London on the jet plane, and there was a man dressed in a uniform like the Catholic priests wear, and he was conducting himself not like a priest you'd see in a movie, very friendly. He was a very sophisticated type man, and people could sense that. And I never thought I'd see him again, but in Baltimore at the airline station where the baggages come off, well, I turned around and there he was next to me, and I just turned to him and said, "Hello, friend, are you a Jesuit?" And he says, "Yes," with a big smile. You see all of his teeth. And he was very happy with himself. I said, "Well, listen, I'm very interested in the Jesuits. I've read some about them. And what would you think about the Council of Trent and what was invented in the Council of Trent and the infiltration of the Jesuits into Protestantism and the use of the Jesuits through organizations like the Illuminati and the futurism theory, the secret rapture that they invented for the Protestants?" And I talked to him about a lot of those things, and he had a metamorphosis take place. His face became rigid, his smile went away, and he looked me right in the eyes and he said, "You know quite a bit, don't you?" Like he never expected it. And I told him that you know, I was one of the Protestants that got away, and if he could realize that if somebody like me knew those things, just imagine some of the other of God's people that know those things and are willing to tell anybody about them. And it was an amazing situation how that man's face changed, and he thought he was like in one identity, but all of a sudden he realized that these dark secrets of theirs, they're being found out, and I'll never forget that. Would you consider that Jesuitism to be an occult secret society?
It is an occult secret society from the point of view that the Jesuit order, what you know of the Jesuit order and what everybody knows of the Jesuit order, is not the truly Jesuit order. What that means is even the Jesuits within the Jesuit order, they all are not knowing the secret society, the inner secret society that they are surrounded by.
Spiritualism and the papacy is as close as two fingers are on your hand.
One cult that started Fatima, okay, the cult of Fatima, the Roman Catholic cult, seems to be antagonistic to the rest of the Roman Catholic Church. It seems that they believe that the Pope that's in now is an antichrist.
The whole thing is that Satan gets as many people as he can on his side, and by starting something else up, he can get more.
Oh, I see.
And he starts first one thing and then another. That's why he's got so many churches and so many cults and so many this and so many that. What he can't get one person on, he gets them on another. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing that he gets most people on is TV. Satan has all kinds of organizations. Mm-hmm. But the Catholic Church is his one biggest, most extensive organization that there is in the world.
Yeah.
He has these others organized to take care of things, but and in some places he works, even destroys himself to make other things work out. for himself.
What's the connection between Jesuitism and communism?
Well, that's a long story, but really, communism was really started by the Catholic Church, and the Pope himself is allied with them and a communist himself. They sent some Jesuits into a little town where they wanted to start Catholicism. Now this I learned from E.T. Babienko that worked with me on a lot of detective work that I did. And E.T. Babienko told me that after they had no success for a short while, they substituted the place with twice as many Jesuits as they had in the beginning, and after years they got nowhere. So they said the only way in the big meetings in the Vatican, where the headmen all meet, they said the only way we'll ever get anywhere in putting Catholicism in Russia is to take away the children from the parents and do away with the Greek Orthodox Church by training the children otherwise. And in their brains, this was all formulated, and they decided to put communism into Russia and to put hard-boiled communism, which is Bolshevism, and later bring it on to a de-Christianized Christian Bolshevism.
So the connection between Zionistic Judaism and communism then is, would you say that's a fraudulent story?
Yes, to some extent, and yet they use the Jews wherever they can.
So the Roman Catholic Church utilizes Judaism.
They utilize anything and everybody to bring their means to an end.
So these writers that point to the international Jewish conspiracy, drawing from historical material that appears to see the Jewish involvement in all this, may very well be part of the Catholic ploy to take the heat off of themselves?
Yes, and that's absolutely the truth. And have you ever heard tell of this book that the Zionism taken over?
Chief Elders of Zion.
Yes, I have one of the books. They're hard to get. I can get them if necessary for anybody, but I have ways and means of getting them. But it takes me a little while to get them. And when you get them, you better keep them to yourself. But here's the thing. When the Zionists got all that underneath, the Catholics got a hold of some of this material in these books. And now, what do you think that Hitler did away with all the Jews for? Is to get rid of the heads and the ones that would promote this Zionism. And they're doing what the Zionists proposed to do.
So actually, in reality, then, there is a Zionist movement, but the Roman Church is trying to take over it and control it for their own purposes. They
have a club of 300 at Rome that does nothing but figure out how they can do it and why they can do it and where they can do it and why they can go ahead. The war in Vietnam was nothing more than just using the United States to put in Catholicism into Vietnam.
What do you know about the organization of the Knights of Columbus?
I know too much.
Too much.
And too much to tell.
Oh, I see.
But I know one thing. That is that they're a strong organization in the United States, and they have a lot to do with this here Mustachia Army.
The Ustachis?
Yes. When I was...
Are the Knights of Columbus also organized in other countries?
You bet your life they are.
Or are they financing the Ustachis of certain...
Wherever there is in other countries, they're organized. Wherever the Catholics are in force, they're organized.
Well, is the Knights of Columbus an extension of the Jesuit order?
Well,
but into secular society?
They all work with together. They're dovetailed.
Do you know anything about the connection between Roman Catholicism and Masonry?
They're tied in together.
Would you say Roman Catholicism actually manipulates and controls Masonry?
they've got to the place where they're in control of a lot of things, and they have a lot to do with masonry. You know, one of the heads of masonry, at the head of things, is a Catholic.
One night he told you that they run our church. Tell us about that.
His people run our church. He said.
Who were his people?
The Catholic Church. The Catholic Church run all churches.
He said that to you?
Yes, yes.
And specifically that the Catholic Church runs the Seventh-day Adventist Church?
Well, very much like that. I don't recall exactly the way it was worded. This is the impression that I got from what he had said, the statement that he had made. We. He always whenever he said we, that was the church and he. He always included himself as the church.
From Jeannie's testimony about her marriage to a Catholic priest agent, we get a sense of the tremendous confidence that the Roman Catholic Church has now in her position of dominating the nations and its institutions. Very soon we're going to be locked into a period of terrible persecution, and there'll be many martyrs among the faithful Christians. Listen to the words of Revelation 17 verse 6. "And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus." She is uniting with the rulers of the world. Listen, in verse 12, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." Rulers in this world will give their political power to a system, a political system that will be dominated by the papacy. And that system is going to make war upon God and his followers. In Revelation 18, part of our last message to the world is to tell the world, all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornications, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. That the governments of the world are in an unholy alliance with the Roman papacy, and God is going to judge them. I want you to listen very carefully to Dr. Hiram Duke's testimony as he shares their position in world politics.
When I was behind these locked doors, they told me that they were going to cede the South. And with what they told me then, I knew they were planning World War II. And I knew they were planning on bringing all the DPs and seeding the South with DPs. They've done it. They've got to the place now where...
DP is... What's a DP?
That's the folks that are displaced in the old country on account of war.
Well, one thing that's interesting is no bombs are dropped on the Vatican.
Well, my wife was the head stenographer in the Vatican, in the Pentagon at that time. And she gave all the orders and sent out all the orders to the big men. And she had orders to see that there was no Protestant flew over the Vatican and over Rome, because they were afraid that they might, through their own ingenuity, want to drop a bomb there. Are you aware that the head immigration authority in Germany was a strong Catholic, and that he let the men in that were trained in New York for the hoodlums that went over to do away with the Tsar and his outfit? And they were shipped by him into Moscow by getting one of their men into Moscow and shipped in boxcars, and this fellow in Moscow, they got in there ahead, went and opened the padlocks off the boxcars and let them out, and they went right up and did away with them.
Lenin and Trotsky.
Yes, sir.
Trotsky was trained in New York, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The head of a bunch of hoodlums.
Got to talking with E.T. Babienko about a lot of things. And we got in places where we wanted to know things. And we put on priest garb, dressed up like a priest, and he put on even garbs on beyond the priesthood. Well, because he spoke in 44 languages more fluent than I do in English, and his wife speaks 33 languages fluently. Why, and he understands enough in other languages right away quick, and he picks them up like magic. The General Conference used him for interpreter to go between a lot of these places wherever they needed him. And he went to Europe and went to Asia and a lot of these different things. And when he went to Asia, he was over in the Himalayan mountains, where it's so difficult to learn the language. He learned some things was going on in Europe, and he wanted to go over and find it out. So he took an airplane, and he flew over there, and he dressed up like a big head man in the Catholic Church, and he went in among these other men, and he purported that he couldn't understand their language. They had to get him an interpreter. So they got him an interpreter, and he understood their language better than they did. And he understood everything they were saying and everything they were saying about him. And that way, why, he fooled them to where they thought he was a high dignitary, and he went in and found out things that he wouldn't otherwise. When he found out when he went to Europe that they were planning on getting rid of the Greek Orthodox Catholic Church. And one reason they tried with the Illuminati tried to put a bank in Russia, and they couldn't get the bank in Russia because the fact that the Tsar was too smart for them. And so they said, well, the only thing we can do is do away with the Tsar. And
What years was this?
well, this was way back in the time of before the World War I. They wanted to not only get rid of the Tsar, but they wanted to get Catholicism into Russia. And they were trying this before they tried to get the money bank in there. And when they sent, I think it was 1,000 Jesuits into Russia, most of them are centered around a little country town and a little place in Russia. And they tried it for over a year and they didn't make any headway. So they sent twice as many more in that area, and then they didn't get anywhere, and so they called a big meeting over in Rome of all the head folks from all over the world, and they planned on what they could do, and they found out that the best thing they could do was to get rid of the parents taking care of their children, to educate the children, and that way, if they took the children away from the parents, that they could control and get Catholicism in there later. So they put in hard-shelled Bolshevik communism, and they thought, well, we'll annul that and get it so it isn't that way later on, and put in a de-Christianized Christian communism. And they planned all this ahead. And he learned this. When he got this information, and they found out that they'd done this already, and that they take the children away so that they could imbibe communism into the children and take them away do away with the Greek Orthodox Catholic Church. And then they could control and later get things into Russia, and control Russia. And they'd do away with the Tsar and the government and the whole works. And then they planned on doing it in World War I. They dined, wined, and educated 300 hoodlums in New York to do all this, and to go over and take over the Tsar and take over Russia, and put this Bolshevism in Russia. Well, when they got it all ready, they had already gotten their man. The first president that they really put in was Woodrow Wilson, and they had gotten him in office, and so they told Woodrow Wilson, you tell England if she don't let those men in the ship that you've captured go on into France and things go on through, that we won't bring the United States in and won't do anything for you, and you'll be out of luck. And so immediately they let the ship go on into France and went into Switzerland, down into the dark forest, and the head man of migration was Catholic, and he loaded one of them on the train and got him into Moscow through one crook or another. And then when he got him into Moscow, he loaded the rest of the 300 with all their guns, ammunition, and money, $20 million in gold, in boxcars, and sent them in there. When they got there, this fellow that was in Moscow opened up the boxcars that they were sent to him, and out they come and went right straight up and took the Tsar over, and they were scared for a long time. They weren't going to make the grade, but they did. And communism was in Russia. Now, after they got that all done, then this fellow decided there's something going on, and I'd like to know a little more about some of these things. So a little later, he went over to a new part of the Balkan states and went in dressed up the same as he did before. And he found out that they'd called the folks from all over the world into the Vatican to plan for things in the future, and that they were planning on putting a new war into Second World War, and that they planned and put Hitler in to do it. And he found out the reasons it was all done and why they had it when they did have was that the young folks in Germany were falling for Bolshevism and communism, and the young folks in the Catholic Church in Italy were doing the same. And they said, well, we've got to put something in there that's as near like it that they'll fall for and control the situation. And so they finally, after considering a lot of things and so forth, they said, we've got to do something, because something got to be done. They put out a magazine among these young folks to stop them from turning Bolshevik and communist oriented, and it was so bad that they decided that they'd have to do something, because Russia put out another magazine that told that way back before this they had controlled another country with the same kind of government, and it was in such and such books and such libraries in Europe, and they printed what was in the books, and in these magazines it had such a percussion that they said, we've got to do something else, we've got to control the situation. So they said, we'll put in Nazism in Russia that was born in their brains, and fascism in Italy, and we'll pick our men, and they had Hitler picked and his face altered to do the job. They sent money.
What do you mean by his face altered?
Well, they altered his nose and different things.
Oh, really?
And then they picked Mussolini for Italy, and they sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to begin the situation, and it went through the Swiss banks into Germany. I know of that, and from what about E.T. Babienko told me. And when they got the whole thing started, it was all planned, fascism, and that's how Hitler got to be head of the German army.
What about all of his occult interests? You know,
well, that's all planned.
Aryan, Northern European race stuff, Hollow Earth, and all that.
That's all invented stuff that they worked out together. This Mein Kampf that he was supposed to write was hired to be done by a man in England, and he never wrote it at all. And as far as I could learn, and Babienko could learn, and then they went through with the Nazi works in the World War II that you all know about, and now we have a breakdown in communism. It isn't the old Bolshevik communism, and Catholicism is being put in Russia, and our work is going forward because they couldn't let Catholicism in without letting us in, and they're still holding down on things. But they're using Catholicism to gain control of the whole world. Over 50% of the world is communist today. I'll tell you something else that you might be interested in, and that is that when Woodrow Wilson was put in, the Catholics brought in enough Catholics from Europe with the understanding that they were to vote Democrat to throw the election for Woodrow Wilson.
It's a pity to have even to say that at this point in the history of the United States, in the history of the presidents, has not been other president. From the time of President Washington, that was the first president to be utilized by the Jesuits. If you were not aware of that, President Washington already was initiated by the Jesuits to bring about the first communication with the Vatican ever known in this country. From there on, President Reagan, to all this time, President Reagan has come to fulfill the greatest moment in the history of this conspiracy, because no other president has come as close as President Reagan with the Vatican, and even not even John F. Kennedy. What that means is they have done to President Kennedy, to President Reagan, what they were not able to do even through a Roman Catholic president. And nevertheless, I will say this: the religious belief of President Kennedy is nothing more, nothing else than another expression of Catholicism. Perhaps I need to clear this. Roman Catholicism is not only the Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism is still, and it has been at work outside the Roman Catholic system. What that means, there are many daughters of the Roman Catholic system outside the Roman Catholic system. And as there are many daughters, these daughters have children, and of course President Reagan fit within that picture. His relationship with the Vatican today brought about several things. One of them is the diplomatic relationship with the Vatican. Second, the preparation for the signature of a concordat between the Vatican and the United States. And if you want to know, this never took place overnight. President Reagan was prepared and initiated for the task that is performing today as President of the United States by the Jesuits of Rome, in the time that he served as a star in a movie that was very well known and still being showed today, a very old movie about the football team of Notre Dame.
New Rockney.
That's correct. This is the time that the first contact was made by the Jesuits with Reagan. Jesuits, under the stream of an induction, they were not directly to be involved. They only were the elements, the intellectual element that will prepare this. The case of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the president, was killed by the Jesuits of Rome, but there was no a Jesuit there involved directly. Nevertheless, was the Jesuit who prepared the plot against his life and prepare and train those who were to kill him.
They arranged it.
Yes, it happened with President Kennedy, the same thing. The assassination of Kennedy is another fact that can be proved of any time that was ordered and by the Jesuits in order to get rid of a president that already was a shame to the Roman Catholic institution, being a Roman Catholic. You have two different streams. In Abraham Lincoln, you have that there was a man professing to be a Christian, solid Christian, and then there you have a man that professed to be a solid Catholic, but then put to shame his own institution when he was confronted about what he will do as a Roman Catholic president about the Constitution and about the interests of the Roman Catholic institution. When he placed the Constitution of the United States above the canon laws of the